Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
This is Meg White from ICM, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Attention passengers, this is your captain speaking. I must apologize for the lengthy delays. Our check engine light came on, and I don't know the first thing about airplane maintenance. We've called the mechanics, and once they get the paperwork sorted out, we'll be on our way. So why don't you just sit back, relax, and enjoy our in-flight entertainment, Promoter 101, and we'll be on our way very shortly. Thank you.
Welcome to the Promoter 101 podcast. Amazingly, somehow, episode 83 already. And well, here we go.
We're excited about episode 83 of Promoter 101. Dan, we're going to be joined by Coda's Rob Challice, letting us know how things are running across the pond. Moo Creative Scott Scovill, give us a peek backstage into the world of all things production.
Joe Pryor is going to share a war story with us.
Plus, we got our buddy Dave Brooks from Amplify magazine and Billboard here to break down the news of the week.
Hi, it's Steve Zapp from ITB International Talent Booking Agency. I'm on Promoter 101.
Believe it or not, Dan and I actually travel from time to time, so you should catch us out on the road when Dan and I are in your town.
Get ready, land of hockey. I shall be in you soon. Oh, yes, I shall. Tuesday, July 24th, IAVM's Venue Connect 2018, the Promoter Agent Panel with a star-studded lineup. Talking from CAA, Brian Hill, APA, Ralph James, Emporium's Jason Zink, Frank's Productions, Charlie Goldstone, Live Nation's Riley O'Connor, and I have the honor of moderating the gala.
You can register for IAVM at iavm.org. And if you've got something on your chest, you want to unburden yourself, reach out to us. Hit us directly at steiny@promoter101.net. That goes to both Dan and I. We'd love to hear from you.
Hey, you can follow us on Twitter, Luke's Luke Pierce. I'm the Jew, and the show is Promoters 101. That's the word promoter, then a S, and then a 101, in the plural kind of format of it all.
Hey, this is Mark Geiger from WME, William Morris Endeavor Entertainment, coming to you on Dan Steinberg's podcast.
Did you know the podcasts that we've done in the past are still available online for you to listen to at your leisure? Like if you want to binge listen or you've got like a Luke and Dan fetish, we can help you with that. This week, we're re-airing episode 41.
I don't know how much of your fetish I can help you out with, but certainly if you're looking for an interview from Ticketmaster's David Marcus, you're going to find the right place in episode 41. David breaks down the future of ticketing inside the ticketing giant.
That's going to be followed up by Jane's Addictions manager, Peter Katz's Talk and Shop.
And we got 3 questions with ticketing professional Barrett Newman.
And don't you think it's about time that you subscribe to Promoter 101? It don't cost nothing. It's free. Do it.
Do it. Do it now. Subscribe.
Tim Sweetwood, C3 presents Promoter 101.
News of the week.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another segment of News of the Week. We're joined now by scholar Dave Brooks from Amplify and Billboard magazine. Welcome back to the podcast, David.
Steiny, always a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the esteemed intro.
The dulcet tones of Dave Brooks coming at you live and direct on Promoter 101. What's going on out there in the rockin' world, my friend?
Well, at Amplify, we love our investigative scoops, and we think we found a festival up in Northern California that, if anything, people should be kind of warned about. There's an event that we've been following in Antioch, California, which is a town I lived in when I was a young man, and it's called XO Festival. So a couple friends and agents flagged this thing to me, and they're like, dude, you got to see this sizzle video they put together where they're promising like 8 stages, 2 silent discos, like every buzz phrase you ever hear in a festival, right? They're going to offer. So I started digging around into it and, doing a little research on the organizers. They didn't want to tell me their names, which I thought was weird. And it turns out they were arrested in March for participating in a complex real estate scheme where they were literally using fake documents and bad checks to illegally rent and rip off landlords. It's just crazy.
Let me get this straight. You're not 100% sure that this isn't a real festival yet, as you're still doing the research, correct?
It is a real festival in the sense that I've confirmed the artists are booked by the agents.
What's the name of the festival? One more time so our fans know what they're looking for.
It's called EXO Festival up in Antioch, California. And, like I said, these guys were were arrested earlier this year. They haven't gone on trial yet. They haven't been convicted. As you said, innocent until proven guilty. And I'm not trying to say the festival is a scam or fraud. I'm just saying there's some really suspicious things going on, and consumers should be really careful before they buy tickets for this event.
So watchdog style, buyer beware, know going in that there's something possibly going on where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah, I agree. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and you only got so much money to spend on festivals, so spend it wisely.
Although it could turn out to be the coolest thing ever.
And honestly, Dan, I hope it does. I'm not rooting for festivals to fail. I hope it is a success despite the things that I've uncovered. Right now, a lot of red flags.
What else is happening in the world of rock and roll, my friend?
Well, the Government Accountability Office, which is an office within the federal government, issued a really interesting report looking at the big issues in ticketing. As only the government can do, it gave it the bland name of market characteristics and consumer protection issues. But it looked at some of the issues with bots, scalping, and just how institutionalized the secondary market has become. So after the report came out, Democratic Senator Bill Pascrell, who's always been a critic of Live Nation. He opposed the merger, tried to introduce laws that regulate the company. He really seized on aspects of this report. For the first time, he is calling for Live Nation, Ticketmaster, and StubHub to be broken up. He called it a monopolistic corporation whose practices are torturing consumers and strangling competition. He's really piggybacking off that New York Times article that came out in April that accused Live Nation of basically being overly aggressive in how it pursues its Ticketmaster contract. So Ticketmaster has responded. One of the things they have said is Bill Pascrell is misinterpreting the report in their opinion, saying that the report is more about secondary ticketing. It doesn't really have much to do with Ticketmaster's position in the industry. They issued a lengthy statement, which you can find, on our site. But the summary of it, I think the last part they said was, we support all efforts, including legislation and regulation, to improve the overall ticket buying and live event experience for fans. And we hope the GAO report provides a vehicle for the rest of our industry to do the same. So there's disagreement about what the report says. It's interesting that Pascrell is now escalating his calls for the company to be broken up. He hasn't done that before.
In business in general, is the concept of a breakup a normal thing by government? I mean, I remember when the Bell Company got broken into a bunch of different sectors back in the early 80s, but this isn't a normal thing for government to step in like this, right?
It's very rare that the Department of Justice, which would handle this type of thing, would actually break up a company, especially one the size of a Live Nation. In our industry, Live Nation is the biggest company out there, $10 billion company, but that's actually kind of small. Look at the companies that have been targeted for these kind of breakups. Companies like Microsoft, Facebook in the wake of the Cambridge Analytica scandal, maybe even Google. There's pretty much zero political appetite for breaking up Live Nation. I have zero belief it'll actually happen. But it's kind of an interesting question. I don't think breaking the company up would really do anything besides maybe stifle growth and slow the market we have right now. I mean, Live Nation continues to post really strong earnings, and I believe it's lifting the entire business. If the company was stagnant, not having any progress and not growing, maybe, and it was just bringing down other competitors, that would still be a stretch. But right now, the company is so strong, I don't think breaking it up would result in what people think it would.
let's talk about who's going on the road that's exciting.
There's so many tour announcements coming out. We just had Christina Aguilera on the cover of Billboard, and she's touring with Big Boy. What's really cool, I think, is this Dave Chappelle with Jon Stewart tour. They're going to do a limited run. They're doing Boston, El Paso, and Houston, for basically a 2-week tour. But it sounds really cool that maybe this is a tour that can expand. Chappelle's doing more work right now. Don't forget that also he has his Controlled Danger show with John Mayer. And that show is actually managed by Irving Azoff, who has hinted to me, more to come.
With the collaborations of Dave Chappelle and John Mayer and the Grateful Dead for Dead & Co., what do we have to do to get Dave Chappelle jamming with the Grateful Dead & Co.? How fucking cool would that be?
Maybe get the Roots in there too and just have this crazy jam session.
That would be awesome.
I'd buy a ticket for that.
Well, I'd try to get a comp, but I'm definitely going. Anything else popping in the world we should be talking about, Dave?
They got a small item for you. AEG Presents continue to grow, and they have signed a deal with Salt Lake City's Post Fontaine to book the new Union Event Center in Salt Lake City. It's kind of a cool deal. This is a really interesting building. It's flexible, different bars, and I just think it just shows that you're seeing these promoters now. They've pretty much maxed out what they can do in the big markets. So now they're, really moving into the tertiary. We saw that with Frank Productions. We saw that with the United Concert in Salt Lake City with Live Nation. So I can imagine maybe that's what someone like you would think about that. These guys are just kind of seem to be stepping on everybody's toes.
Oh, I think there's plenty to be done out there, and you're talking about developing venues, and that's something that I think is a consumer thing. You continue to create new venues that are a better experience for the fan. Every time a new room opens up, especially with a real partner behind it that knows how to set up a stage and viewing areas and sight lines and exits and egress. And it's the best thing for the fan when the guys that produce shows are developing venues, because it's the best fan experience. And I think everybody wins there. The artist, the fan, the promoter, managers, the agents, everybody's having a better experience, and it's going to shift out the concert experience so more people are coming to shows, and the entire industry wins at that point.
You're always pushing the win-win. I like that about you. You see the bigger picture.
Well, I think it is a bigger picture in this case. I don't think everything is a win-win. I mean, we can look at the other side where you're talking about investing money in Salt Lake City, which is historically a tough market.
Right. That's interesting. Why is it tough?
People don't come out to shows. The religion is so strong there in the Mormon community. Nobody comes out to shows there because it's such a big part of the population. So Sunday shows are hard, even when there's NBA basketball games. It's hard. You've got one day a week where people aren't coming. But hey, Chick-fil-A closes every Sunday, part of their belief system, and they still have a vibrant business. So there's a certain way that you can build your business to deal with those things. And in some cases, when you're going into secondary or tertiary, you look at those things when you're building your model and you take it there. So obviously, if Live Nation and AEG are both investing in Salt Lake City, they see something there.
Oh, I agree.
Dave Brooks, always an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast. I want to thank you so much for just an amazing time in the industry right now, don't you think?
It's incredible how much stuff is going on, how much stuff's getting announced all the time. And I love hearing about it on the podcast, Dan. You are going strong with this thing. It just gets better and better.
I'm blushing right now. You can't see it, but I'm bright red. Thank you so much, Dave. Make sure you check out Dave's report, The Real. If you haven't done that yet, you can go to Dave's website and do that now. Dave, what's the address?
ampthemag.com.
Dave Brooks on Promoter 101, ladies and gentlemen. Give him a big hand. We've got Carrie Davis from Live Nation here to talk to us about Women Nation. Carrie, can you tell us about this new endeavor?
Yes, I'm happy to. The Women Nation Fund was launched yesterday, and the idea is to be an early stage investment fund for female-founded businesses in the live event space. So we're focused initially on the promotions and booking area.
So kind of a credit union-esque supporting women in entertainment.
Correct. I think, if you start with sort of the context of how all of this came to fruition, women in general, as we know, are underrepresented across the board in music, particularly on the creative side where there's been more research done that 12% of the songwriters, 5% of the producers. And then if you sort of extrapolate from there, we're also missing from the executive ranks and kind of the business that supports the creative. And in live specifically, we found women are mostly underrepresented in our promotion, booking, and call it events or festivals business. So this fund is a start to try to address that and bring more diversity and more women into that business.
And I was reading through Polestar, some of the people involved with this are some of the biggest women in the industry. So you guys have put together quite the team.
Yeah, we're excited. For now, we have an internal committee that's going to be vetting the businesses, and it is an all-star panel of promoters, female promoters from across the world. Virginia Davis, who's one of the top country managers at G Major Management. We have Leslie Olnick, a promoter who joined Live Nation recently. Mara Gibson, who is the president of Frontgate Ticketing, and so on. So it's an exciting team. And then down the road, we'll probably announce some other senior advisors to the business as well from different parts of the music industry.
Seems like just a really responsible way to use your power right now.
I think it's a good way to start to address the lack of representation. I don't by any means think it's the solution, but it can hopefully be a solution. Our hypothesis is that potentially one of the barriers to entry in this business is capital. So if we provide some of that capital, can we grow the overall pool of female entrepreneurs in this space? And we're hoping we can.
Now, if people have an idea they want to submit for funding, how do they do that?
Go to our website. It's womennationfund.livenation.com. Plenty of information on what the fund is, how it works, who the committee is who will be vetting the businesses, and there's a link to download the application, and we'll get back to everyone as quickly as possible.
Now, I imagine after the announcement yesterday, you probably had a nice flood to the website and people already submitting for that.
Yeah, we did. And the other exciting thing is this is global. So anywhere in the world, if you have an early stage business that falls into this area, we'd love to hear from you. So it's not just North American centric, which is nice too. So we're getting really some exciting leads from around the world.
Carrie, thank you so much. Live Nation being a great corporate neighbor.
Thanks, Steiny.
That'll do it for the news of the week.
I'm Lucy Dickens from ITB and I'm on Promoter 101.
It's everyone's favorite time for the announcement of our Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
This week, for the first time ever, our Badass of the Week comes from San Antonio, Texas, from the land of the Tobin Center, the wonderful and talented and very sharp dressing, Aaron Zimmerman. He's one of the coolest people I know in all of San Antonio. So he has that going for him, which is good, making him this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week.
San Antonio is a pretty cool fucking city. They got the river. They got the Tobin Center that Aaron works at. They had the Final Four this year, Dan. I can't knock the land.
They got the Alamo!
San Antonio here. You don't like the 8th largest metropolitan market in America?
First of all, it's not the 8th largest metropolitan market in America. That's bullshit. There's no way that's true.
Do we need to do a fact check? Can we do a fact check, please? Am I just saying fake news? It's the 24th largest market. What is the 8th largest market, Dan? I bet you don't know that.
I can bring it up really quick.
Now I'm curious. What is the 8th largest metro market in America? Why did I pull that out? It's Philly, Camden, Wilmington. That's by GDP. Now, what about population?
Nielsen rating calls number 8 Atlanta.
Interesting.
Sounds right.
Wikipedia says Philly.
If you're talking about the TV market versus the population in the actual city.
Talking population, mass reach, Do we talk in nowadays terms, Dan, about TV size markets? Are you talking DMAs or are you talking like just number of bodies that you could reach with a social post? What is your yardstick these days?
I am talking about DBA because it's about how many people I'm reaching by running that spot. That's what I'm paying attention to. You don't have to live in the city. You just have to be able to make it to the show.
And what percentage of Emporium's marketing mixes are you running TV versus radio versus digital, where you can get just targeted to a zip code at this point?
You can do cable in that kind of buying procedure, not so much a zip code, but in zones. You can do social media by zip code if you want in a lot of cases. TV, you're really buying network if you're just buying the market per se, as far as the major cities, as far as the major networks in most cases. But there's a lot of different ways to break that up. But I'm a big fan of the DMA and like looking at it. If we're looking at the difference between maybe an Aspen or Atlanta, Aspen coming in at 502, Atlanta coming in at number 8, that's important when you're looking at which market are we playing. And I'm big on the DMA. And it's always pretty close if you compare number of people by population in the DMA, because maybe the markets will change by rank by a couple, but it's usually pretty close. Man, have we gotten off the point. By the way, I am not putting Aaron Zimmerman down. I'm saying of the cool people in San Antonio, I find him be the coolest of all those fucking people because I find Aaron to be a badass. And this week, our badass of the week. Fuck you very much, Luke Pierce.
Hey, Aaron, congrats, I guess. You're the coolest person in 2.4 million people in the San Antonio New Braunfels MSA.
We fucking love you, Aaron. You're awesome. Badass of the week, Aaron Zimmerman. Hallelujah.
My name's Tom Windish, and I'm on Promoter 101.
In our feature interview this week, we have a spectacular sit-down from across the pond. Rob Challice from Coda Agency tells us how it is.
Joined by Rob Challice from Coda. How are you doing?
Good afternoon.
Thanks for taking the time.
Pleasure.
You guys are having an amazing moment with your roster. It seems like everything on it is exploding right now.
It's taken 10 years of growth to get here and make it look this simple, really.
We've just left the agency panel that you were moderating, and the common theme joke was all of the agents looking for what axe to steal by looking at your roster, because it's kind of the gold standard right now.
I credit my colleagues like Alex Hardy and Tom Schroeder and the whole team on having this very strong A&R aesthetic in the company. We've invested in young people who feed us tips and see bands and chase other bands. Also got great relationships with the other sources of those tips, be it promoters, very much labels. I think Alex Hardy's led those big relationships with those labels and just getting a sense of what is being signed, what's good, what's got a good team around bands. And then you get a reputation for signing good stuff. I believe it happens now that it's a question will get thrown up when a new act's talking to a label and it's who's your agent? If Coda's not mentioned of being in the conversation, then a question will be asked, why aren't you talking to Coda?
Building to that point is kind of taking a lot of work.
Yeah, because we've been a growing company and a lot of the successful agents we have now have built their rosters from scratch. You know, we've been at the forefront of those kind of trends, be it electronic or the pop electronic crossover. Myself, I'm more in a Americana, left field area, and that has widened. But you get known for doing your job well in an area.
I was thinking about that this week. If an act like Mumford & Sons aren't from America, but yet they are that genre of music, is it still Americana?
I get totally confused by the term. I mean, I'm going over to the country to country. I'm not the biggest country fan. My wife is, and it's partly because it's her birthday. But I have to tell Americans a lot of the time that actually the perception of Americana over here is different from where it is over there. Here, I think we use it as a term to describe a lot of music that comes from America that isn't necessarily straight country, but can't be defined as something else. So maybe we see the umbrellas being bigger than you do in America, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because for us, Americana would be Gillian Welch, the Avett Brothers, in that ballpark of genre, maybe leading into bluegrass.
Yeah.
But I get the sense it's a lot broader for you.
Yeah, I mean, to be completely glib about it, because we do actually get offered certain bands from the US, and they go, it's doing this business over here, it's in this lane, it's doing this. We have to explain to them that to us, some ears over here, this is like world music. It sounds like world music that's come from America. And then we get a confused, puzzled look and we go, yeah, there's some promoters here who would just see it as part, that whole spectrum, that act or that style of act or that act is one to a number of ears over here.
We definitely make ourselves the center of the world in every scenario, but I think most people do that. Wherever you are the center. We were just in one of the other sessions and somebody said, what's going on abroad? And Wayne Forte was like, he means us. I was like, no, he couldn't. He's like, he does. We jumped over the ocean. He meant us.
Yeah. We get on the calls now because we had linked in with Paradigm. And, you know, they say, let's talk about international. And I kind of thought, yeah, we're going to talk about Germany. And it's like, they're going to talk about us.
Right. So let's talk about that. It's been about a year now. You and Paradigm have had a new partnership that's come together.
Yeah. You know, over 4 years, that partnership, and it's gone from strength to strength. there's always that honeymoon period. Well, I think it's almost like pre-honeymoon period where you're actually just feeling around and seeing how you're going to work with each other. I think it was in the second year that it started making real sense to a number of the agents in each company that how to make this relationship work. And really, it was about establishing individual relationships with people over the other side of the water. You know, sometimes you set this up, you unveil it to your company. Everybody kind of thinks it's like a new dawn and everything's going to be different. And, you know, we're going to be picking up American clients every day of the week. And it's like, no, you still have to work at what you're doing. And we've worked both sides of the Atlantic to make this relationship work. It's been so important for both companies. And when I say both companies, within Paradigm, that's also Tom Windish and the Windish agents that are now part of Paradigm, and AIM Only, and those people, fierce, real driven people who have all wanted to see this global company happen. And it's now there.
The synergy between you guys and Paradigm, the rosters before you guys had a partnership was very similar. There were a lot of common X where you guys were the international agents and they were the domestic agents in America. So you guys had very similar rosters already. It seemed like it lent itself to a long-term relationship very easily.
I think it did. And it's amazing how well it's kind of fitted together. I mean, I don't think I'm ever going to book an act that's necessarily booked by one of the AIM Only agents or have come from AIM Only. I love those guys, but
EDM's not your thing.
Yeah. But then I'm more likely to hook up with a Jonathan or Keith Levy down in the Nashville office. I love hanging with Dan Bynum, Fred over on the West Coast, because you just get a real feeling of the West Coast there. And then, you know, the agents in New York, Marty, Ryan, Larry, there's always somebody there that has got an aspect, I think, of my taste, or the same applies for a lot of other agents throughout the Coda and Paradigm setups.
Now that you guys have been working together for a while, our act's starting to become, oh, you need representations overseas. You should talk to this guy. He gets what I do. He probably makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's generally when we are picking up a new act, immediately our colleagues in America are going to be aware that we're talking to that act. And depending how fast it's moving for the act will determine how soon we want to see another agent appointed. If I'm picking up an act over here in the UK and Europe and offering them representation for the world outside the Americas, then I'm going to tell them about Paradigm. I'm going to tell them the advantages of going globally with the group. And generally those managers and clients are interested to hear that. And then there's a bit of pause of, well, what agent would you put us with in that company? Now, if it's moving very quickly, then I think we'd want to introduce somebody fairly quickly to the team. Other times, you know, I'm working with a new act, Honey Harper, actually an American act that's now based over here. Sounds somewhere between a Nick Cave and maybe something from Americana world. Now, I'm talking to the manager about Honey Harper and the artist, and we haven't quite got it figured out which US agent we want to work with yet. But maybe it'll be 3 or 4 months down the line where we actually get that other agent involved. And I think sometimes those processes have to be more organic than forced, because I don't want to force my client and manager into a relationship with, you know, an American agent where 6 months down the line, I'm going to have to be fixing that situation.
Right, you want somebody that's as excited about the act as you are, and that's going to be the right agent for the act.
Exactly, yeah. And it's feeling that it's a right fit for the artist more than anything.
The agency world has changed quite a bit over the last 10 years. A, with all of the American companies starting to make their presence known overseas. And B, when you become a booking agent, it's not just being a booking agent anymore. It's about having the different divisions of branding and sponsorship and film and TV and literature. Paradigm has all of those things. Is that part of the benefit of that partnership?
Yeah, it is. We also have to manage artists' expectations as well, because the moment they sign to us, it's not like the talent department is suddenly waking up and going, what can we do with this? It's more like, maybe a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line, then that hookup might be vital. We can now offer that, and to be realistic, sometimes we're offering it to say we can cover that when it's required. And I'm going to speak for myself here. I think sometimes it gets a little bit overblown what those other services are going to actually provide some of those clients.
Yeah, I think every artist believes if they're at a film and TV agency that they'll get to star in a movie, or if there's branding, they're immediately going to get to do a Kit Kat commercial.
Yeah, and then the cookbook and the whole lot. And it's just like, well, actually, you've got to get your career right and define what it is. And then there might be benefits in using those other services. can be different for a pop artist or EDM artist, where actually the link with the branding or something like that can be key to actually getting the band those first 2 or 3 steps. I will say personally, I don't let it weigh on my mind a lot when I'm signing a client. It's there.
But it helps you guys stay competitive.
Yeah, definitely. The business has changed by having the Americans directly involved in your business, if not day to day, certainly week to week. A lot of Americans have got no concept of what time of day it is over here. So we're always doing our conference calls, obviously to suit the Americans, early evening. And I have managers like this who don't understand it's 11 o'clock here and it's 3 o'clock in LA. So there's that aspect. We're certainly getting on a lot more conference calls with our colleagues in America. And there's a number of things that actually Americans do better than us that we try and learn from. And there's a bunch of stuff that we do better than Americans. We are trying to teach them. And I think sometimes we're a little bit better at blurring the edges and adding a bit of candor and humor into it that I find can be an effective way of getting through bits of business. Then we have to remind ourselves we're in the entertainment business and things do not work by the book all the time. It is very interesting when some Americans do think that several countries of Europe and Asia are going to work the same way as all the states in the US. That's a cultural thing as much as anything.
CAA, now UTA, because of what happened with the agency group, and William Morris are all here. ICM and APA are both doing business here. Does it make you competitive by having an American division?
The makeup of the company is very much Paradigm is the American company that owns part of Coda. And I think that's maybe a difference between Coda and the other American-based companies here like UTA, William Morris and CAA, is that we are still very much doing a lot of the work we do the way we feel is best for this market. We're not imposing American structures on something that works here very well and has been set up in a UK or European fashion.
Because they didn't buy the entire company.
No, that was never for sale. We didn't want to do what maybe 1 or 2 of our competitors have done and effectively go, we've been bought by the Americans. It was key to us that we kept our identity and our name and certainly the ways we do business. That's why it's been important for us. I think that some of those aspects have been adopted by Paradigm as much as us adopting a number of aspects that they have. And this came from Paradigm as well. When they brought in, they'd obviously been looking at a company that had been growing for 5 or 7 years quite strongly. And in 2013, we were doing incredibly well on A&R and signing new acts and have continued to do so. But I don't think it would have made sense to the outside world in UK and Europe if suddenly a successful company overnight turned itself into an American international office.
Formula's working, why change?
And aside from, I think, people in the business and people who work with, whether they be promoters or labels in the UK or Europe, it would have felt wrong. And I think our clients might have asked, what's in it for us, this sudden change? There's a certain aspect about Coda that they love being part of.
Thus the non-rebranding and still being Coda.
Exactly, yeah.
I almost need a diagram for this because
Paradigm brought part of X-Ray as they brought part of us.
Okay.
There's also an investment company in there, Eukipus, but that's another complex thing to explain in itself. The key thing is that both companies, X-Ray and Coda, a large chunk of our equity is owned by Paradigm.
Does that open up the door to working with Steve's office more?
Yeah, we have weekly executive calls across the whole company or the whole group. Steve is usually the one on the call from X-Ray. We share the same intranet, A&R. We're both looking at the same A&R development. But then I think it's been important for X-Ray as well, as they've come into the Paradigm group to retain their individual aspects and their way of doing business. I wouldn't say that Coda's influencing X-Ray or X-Ray's influencing Coda at all in this. It's like we're very respectful of our own identities. Certainly people within X-Ray have been keen to keep that identity as it is.
You're both very strong brands over here.
Yeah. I think to try to force anything different would have just been a mess or worse, just a argument.
Well, it seems like Paradigm has found the entrepreneurs that know how to run a business and have been very successful at that and try to streamline the back office to let them be agents and take away from their time of trying to run a company. And they've been very successful at bringing guys like Time Windish in and AM Only and really build that brand. They've done really well with that.
Yeah, both companies, X-Ray and Coda, are benefiting off that relationship. But one aspect we're probably leading on above other parts of the group is our whole CRM and development. That's what drives our whole contract system, our date sheets, and so on. We're significantly ahead of a lot of companies in the business. So the system that Paradigm will have within a matter of years will be influenced or will be in part because of our development. That's really been one of our strengths, is how heavily we invested in that going over the last 5 to 10 years.
We talked about the company and the buildup and the Americanas, but let's talk about your career. How did you wind up in the position you are as one of the bigger agents at Coda?
I've always hung around musicians. Even when I was playing a bass, I was hanging around other musicians. And I think from quite an early age, I realized that I was as interested in the mechanics of playing live and how a band tours and all the other aspects, probably more so than actually picking up the instrument and playing on stage myself. So I was setting up tours for punk bands that I was either in or I knew and going on the road with them and doing that before I even knew that that was a job. I think the same goes for promoting gigs, is that I was putting on bands I liked and bands had found out about me through me running a fanzine and stuff like this, and putting on shows for people I knew and bands who wanted them. And I found out that you could make a profit out of it. So one thing kind of developed to another.
So you had a fanzine and you were promoting gigs.
Yeah, I started the fanzine when I was about 15 with a couple of school friends. We were running off that fanzine on my dad's printing press, which might sound impressive, but it's just an old Gestetner printing machine that he had. That he had in his church. He was a vicar. So the first issues of our magazine, which is called Enigma, were run off in the vestry of the local church. You know, that was fun because you could go to gigs and you could sell your fanzine for next to nothing, a few pennies, and we'd give away a free patch with it. The punks would love that because you could sew that to your jacket, and then we'd get to meet the bands and we'd do interviews and stuff, and it just felt great. That's the whole thing about being part of a scene. It doesn't matter if it's London or LA or wherever. When you find you're part of a scene and creating a scene, it's just so exciting.
You were part of the punk scene. That was your forte?
I was probably a little bit young when punk broke, and I was living down in the West Country of England. So we were slightly long-haired punks that liked a lot of punk. But by the time I was 15 or 16, around 1980, and then it was turning into anarcho-punk, which was all dressed in black. Every A had a circle around it. It was part of that whole evolution of DIY. Doing your label, doing gigs and so on. And to me, that was always the contradiction, is that you had all these young people who were like getting really organized and doing things for themselves, but actually saying, we're anarchists as well.
We're very organized anarchists.
Yeah, and I love that scene. And that scene sort of gave me an identity as a young adult. And a lot of people I know, and I think a lot of my ethics have sort of grown out of that. And people don't often get that actually it wasn't all anarchy, swearing, spitting and all that. It was actually how you got by in those times. And they're quite depressive times in the late 70s and 80s in London and the UK. You know, a lot of people were thrown on the dole on benefits because of closing factories and stuff. And it just reflected that was the times. And there we were squatting buildings, running venues and running gigs and doing stuff ourselves. So to me, they were my university years, except I didn't go to university.
Well, clearly you love it because you just smiled the whole time while you were talking about that.
Yeah,
so
and I did. And so it went from punk to anarcho-punk. And then I think we had to wait a couple of years before the Americans came over and saved us with grunge. So that was the 80s.
How long were you promoting shows for?
Probably promoting my first show in London when I was about 17. And it would have been a squat somewhere. And it would have probably been a band like The Mob or Subhumans. The Subhumans were old school friends from Wiltshire. And the Subhumans still tour around the world. The US is like one of their biggest markets where they're seen as one of those legendary acts.
Absolutely.
And I still smile when I sort of see a leather jacket with the Subhuman skull and the logo on the back. And I think,
Subhuman.
Yeah, that's it. And I was there, I've been to 100 odd gigs of theirs. That was my doing when I was 17 or 18 and on.
I got to promote them when I was 22. It was a thing of pride.
Where was it?
The Ozatlan Theater. I still remember it, them walking on stage, the house going black. Enjoy it, Denver. Probably won't fucking be here again. Here we go.
That'd be Dick.
Yeah, it's fucking great.
Long-standing oldest mate is Bruce, the guitarist.
Great live band.
Really good. They play better as a band than most bands from that anarcho-punk era. And I think, to me, that's why they've stood that test of time, so they could actually play.
So you're doing shows, the zine, you're in the scene. How'd that lead to booking?
Well, I was running this cassette-only label. At the time, there was no CDs, no internet. It was either vinyl or you put your music on a cassette. So I came up with this idea that actually, why not just do a cassette-only label? So we were running off doing runs of 1,000 to 3,000 tapes of acts like Blythe Power, Blood and Roses, and other bands from the scene then. It was just that thing of like one thing led to another. You're selling fanzines around the country. You're connected to somebody in Darlington or Newcastle or Manchester. And then the mob say, hey, we want to do a bunch of gigs. And they'd probably look to me because I was organised and I'd be setting up a bunch of gigs. And as I say, I didn't know it was a job.
You said you're selling zines around the country. You started out by saying you started when you're 15, but it sounds like you got that to a really big point.
I was running a mail order company. It was called WAT, W-A-T. And essentially what it did was we sold fanzines, not just the fanzine I was producing, Enigma. We sold vinyl and we sold cassettes and we sold a lot of stuff from around the punk scene.
So you're just an entrepreneur from early on.
Yeah, running out of a squat. And 2 or 3 guys who wanted to come in and work and do it and keep busy doing it. You just build up a network of people then. You'll find some band, some Leeds or wherever they were in Yorkshire called the Instigators would go, oh, can you distribute our cassette or our vinyl or our own produced thing? And you go, yeah, sure. You get somebody from Manchester saying, can you sell a few of our fanzines? Sure. We didn't sit there labouring, where's the best margin? How do we turn this into a real success? It was just more like, it was the thrill of being connected, really.
So you organically turned it into a real catalog.
Yeah. I closed that down in about 87 or 88. It was just a little bit too hand to mouth. And you can do that for 2 years, 5 years or whatever. But I was finding that it was just, I was not getting the thrill out of stuffing jiffy bags or worse, those old vinyl mailers and then carting them down the post office. And around that time, I had a couple of mates who I'd done gigs with or put on gigs with, one called Pete Holden and one called Martin Goldsmith. And they happened to be agents at Allied Agency. Martin was just setting up the label Cooking Vinyl at that point. And Pete was a mate, an agent, and been involved in a couple of gigs I'd run. And the two of them said, do you want to come over to Allied and become an agent? So I didn't think about it for too long. I thought I'd give that a go. I had my first salaried job.
Like a real grown-up.
Yeah, my first salaried job since being a toolmaker and getting made redundant. And I was going to have a boss. So I turned up, learned how to use date sheets, learned how to book, learned how to route tours outside the UK, learned how to start building a roster, learned about a lot of commercial promoters I hadn't known about, learned about festivals, and learned very quickly what I knew anyway. I didn't want to work for a boss. So within 9 months or so, I'd left that building, along with Martin Goldsmith as well.
But had clearly learned a ton while you were there.
Yeah, I like learning. That was fascinating to actually see how an agency would run. You get an understanding that it is all about the numbers, certain aspects. Certainly when you're running an agency, it's about the numbers. And I know that applies in every business, but it really is about bringing in the numbers quarter after quarter after quarter. And I went from there to set up my own office. I say my own office. It was kind of like a management cum agency office because Martin and I were managing Michelle Shocked and the folk rock band Oyster Band. And meanwhile, I was sort of growing my own roster as an agent. But we'd made the clever move of setting up our own independent office in the same building as ABS. And ABS were the agency at the time that had Nigel Kerr, who went on to sign Stone Roses. Barry Campbell was doing all the big reggae bands that were touring at the time. And then they had a couple of good young agents come through and really start developing their rosters. One of those agents was Charlie Meyer, who had Levelers, and he signed Radiohead when he was there at ABS. I think They got Manic Street Preachers came in at that point.
It's just a ton of cool.
Yeah. Levelers then set up their management office, which was not just management office, it was the whole thing, like merchandise operation, everything from the same building. So we had them. Cooking Vinyl then moved in upstairs. I think Paul Buck, as an agent, went through ABS. Paul Buck is at Coda now. So yeah, out of that office in Harrow Road, a lot of us sort of really started developing our agent careers. Martin Goldschmidt and Pete Lawrence started developing Cooking Vinyl, and look how big a label that is now.
And the synergy of being able to bump into those guys every day in the halls has got to be really helpful to developing relationships.
Absolutely. It did mean that I was asked to book a lot of stuff that I was like, I don't know if there's a market for this. Because at the time, there were no more as a world music label. It was maybe only going into the 90s that they sort of evolved from being that to actually get into this label they are now, which seems to be anything goes. But of course, I think a big part of that was that at some point in the relationship, Martin Goldschmidt and Pete Lawrence, they split. They were the two founders of Cooking Vinyl.
I got to ask you, for a guy that wanted to get away from having a boss, you're somehow back at a company where you have a boss.
No, I didn't have a boss. My company was FAB. Martin and I were running that company. Cooking Vinyl were renting a separate part of the building. ABS were the landlords. No boss.
How'd that lead to Coda?
Well, moving on a couple of years, I'm sharing an office with Cooking Vinyl. It's 1992 or something like that. I've got a guy called Nigel Morton working there. Nigel managed New Model Army and so on, being a full-time agent himself, and now coming off the back of stopping his involvement in New Model Army, wanted to be an agent and wanted to start again building a roster. He was very keen on the folk world. He started developing that. Steve Strange then gave me a call one day and said he wanted to come back and try being an agent in London again. He'd had an experience a couple of years before that and that he didn't really enjoy. Gone back to Belfast, started promoting shows in Belfast, promoted a couple of my bands. We hit it off. So I welcomed Steve into FAB. Within 2 years, he had built quite a phenomenal roster at that time. Ash was his big act. We decided in that period that we'd be better off having our own office. And we got out of the Cooking Vinyl building, or the building we were sharing with Cooking Vinyl, and moved to Liverpool Road. We were on the first floor of 132 Liverpool Road, and that was the old station agency building. So Steve Hedges, who used to run station agency, was our landlord effectively there. Then we moved to Britannia Row. Of course, Nick Mason was then my landlord because it was the old Pink Floyd studios. Get to the end of the 90s, and FAB then evolved into being Concert Clinic. We changed names because I got a new partner around that time, Clive Underhill-Smith, who was having a real moment with Portishead, Air, Röyksopp. And you just had that roster at the end of the 90s. You go, that defined where music was at that time.
Totally.
It certainly helped propel my career further along at that point. I was never part of the Britpop thing. Maybe I floundered a little bit in the late 90s, but I started finding my stride again, being an agent. So moving to the beginning of this century, I'm starting to pick up bands like Lamb Chop and Calexico. Billy Bragg moved to me. It was at that time that we got a call from Phil Banfield, who was running MPI, and him and Alex wanted to meet us with the idea of discussing joining up, doing a merger. Definitely MPI were in a position at that time that they'd lost an agent or two, and they were looking to bolster what they were doing. So it was a good match, and that was it.
So you guys rebranded as Coda?
Well, yeah, end of 2001, we meet, we do the deal quite quickly. We decide we're going to start at the beginning of January 2002. Clive, to his credit, was great at coming up with names, came up with the name Coda. Excellent. We had a logo straight away, and we were off.
So never went back to having a boss, just became a partner.
I certainly wasn't carrying the full risk at that time. That was a significant change. And then in 2007, Coda went from being a limited company to then being a partnership. In that time, Miles Copeland had owned a chunk of Coda when it started off because he owned part of MPI. But by 2007, we were a partnership where essentially 5 of us were splitting the risk and splitting the profit, splitting the decisions, taking responsibility for the company. And very much thanks to our financial controller, Dave Halliburton, we as agents kind of learnt how to run a company.
Learn by doing?
Yeah, but I mean, we had Phil Banfield there, so he'd done it. And we had Dave Halliburton there, who's just so good at running companies. whereas we were kind of sort of providing the direction and the drive. And I think that's an important thing, the drive. When you realize you can run your own company and you can actually lead people and you can bring in good people and you can provide them with an environment that they can thrive in, the drive you have to make that company work is just huge. That's really, to me, if anybody said pinpoint the point where Coda started moving on this trajectory, then I would say it was 2007.
Before I let you go, can I get some advice for young upcoming agents on what you would stress to them to be successful, what they need to do?
Find your lane musically, network as much as possible, build relationships, certainly with promoters and internationally. Because if you're going to be in this game for a long time, they're going to be the people that you need year in, year out. And don't get despondent. Things will not always go your way. You will lose a client or two, but put in the hours and be good at it, and you will establish yourself in the end. It's a tough career, though.
Thank you so much for taking the time and talking to us.
Pleasure.
Love that Rob shows us his punk rock stripes in this interview. Clearly, his success has not changed his values at all.
Brian Jonas from High Road Touring, and I am on Promoter 101.
Tweets of the week.
Can't avoid it. No way around it. No way around it at all. The show's called Promoter 101. We got to talk about them. We got some tweets of the week. Let's start here, Dan. Here. We're in the process of redoing all the radio spots with only new tracks and none of the hits.
Oh, great. I hope we can pay for those assets a second time, too, because that'd be great. So we've got spots with no hope of moving any tickets. What do I look like, your sugar daddy? Go sell your album to your label.
Learning you're not getting the return play from a Facebook post. Just another day in the music business.
So awesome to learn that your history is not going to be respected, or more importantly, that the venue found out from the ad before you got to call them, too. Always makes you feel really special.
Mouthing along with the band's stage banner between songs after seeing the show 3 times this week already.
Thank you, Sprangfeld. You are the best audience ever.
When an agent rubs your nose in the success of a show you just passed on. I love this one. Hashtag Promoter 101.
There's nothing like someone calling to say, I told you so. It's like, look, man, sometimes we get them wrong. They're investments and we're trying to do the best thing for our staff and our company and our families. And I'm hoping the best success for everybody. Rising tides, rises all ships. Kind of a dick move, though.
I told you so is perhaps on my family crest. So I don't know who this was inspired by, but kudos to whatever agent is there. When you have to hound a manager to approve a settlement so you can pay them.
I don't remember what manager inspired this. Yes, I do. It was you.
All right, listen up, motherfucker. Put some grids on your fucking sheet so I can approve this from my phone on Monday after the show plays over the weekend. You're not going to wire that shit until Monday afternoon anyways. Let's just be civil about this thing and realize that no one banks on Saturdays, and we need the extra day of travel and road recovery to get back to a desk to review 30 pages of settlement and expenses. That does it. No more Promoter 101 tweets of the week for this week. Make sure you follow the man himself. Dan Steinberg is on Twitter. He's at The Jew. Check him out.
Hi, this is Nick Farkas from Evenco. I'm going to be on Promoter 101.
This week, our war story comes from stage manager Mastermind, Joel Pryor.
Many people know him best as the stage manager from New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Fest, but covers shows all over the country. Just one of the better production minds in the business. Joel Pryor, welcome to Promoter 101.
Thank you for having me.
You must have seen a million great things over the years, but what is your favorite war story that you can share with us?
Probably the one that comes to mind most recently. It was the first year I took over as the artist relations manager for the Super Lounges at Essence Music Festival, New Orleans Superdome, every 4th of July weekend. I stress weekend for a reason. Anyway, first day of the festival, which is on Friday, Charlie's longtime manager, Eddie, comes into our office about 10:30 p.m., right as the headliner that night's going on. I think the headliner on that one may have been Maxwell. Eddie's the only one there. Charlie's in town, but the band's not in town. And they're going to be opening up for Mariah Carey, who's headlining on the Saturday night bill.
I'm familiar with this young artist, Mariah Carey. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So Charlie Wilson, if you guys know who he is, you know.
Legend.
Total legend. Funk at his best. Charlie, like I said, he's in town, but the band's not. So Eddie comes in our office. He goes, I need a jet. I was like, I can get you a jet. And of course, Eddie looks at me and goes, you can't get me a jet. I was like, Eddie, why do we need a jet? He's like, well, the band is stuck in Detroit, and they won't be able to get here until 5 or 6 p.m. at the earliest tomorrow night. That means they would miss their 11:30 a.m. sound check. As we always say, anything that could go wrong will go wrong in our business. And turns out what happened after Eddie explained the circumstance, commercial flights had been canceled due to a storm, so the next flight wouldn't get them there till late and probably screw up Charlie's actual set where he had already planned, if I can't get the band there, I don't know what I'm going to do kind of thing. Long story short, I go, Eddie, we can get you a jet. Just give me some time. As everyone should, you should have a jet guy. I have a jet guy. Call a guy I've got out in L.A., and believe it or not, he was actually just getting off a flight from San Fran, so kind of blew him up to get him on the phone. I tell him the circumstance. He goes, give me a little bit of time and we'll get back to you. About an hour and a half, 2 hours go by. He gets back to me. And of course, Eddie, the tour manager, has been just pacing back and forth and blowing me up. And my buddy calls him back. He goes, I think I got a handle for you. Well, he actually got it backwards. He thought that the band needed to go from New Orleans to Detroit. So thinking we had it wrapped up, we did not. We go back to the drawing board. And as I stated earlier, this is a holiday weekend. So the hardest part, getting the jet, is actually getting the pilot for the jet a lot of times. That was our biggest issue, was waiting on a confirmation for a pilot that could make the run. So a few hours go by, everybody's still working diligently to make sure everything happens. And finally, 2:33 in the morning, we call Eddie back like, all right, we pretty much got you set up, got the pilot set up. How would you like to pay for it? Give us an Amex card, and there you go. Boom. Finally put the deal together. Several $1,000s later, we give them a confirmation number. I probably went to sleep about 4 in the morning. I woke up at 6:30, the time that the band would be picked up at their port in Detroit and landing in New Orleans. They actually landed in New Orleans at around 8:30, 9 o'clock that morning. Sound check was at 11:30. Nobody was the wiser. The cooler thing, though, somehow the story got out about having to get the band there and getting a private jet by a blogger in New Orleans at the end of the show. It really made me feel good, even though the blog stated that the manager raced around to make sure they got a jet for the band.
Well, there you go. The manager taking all the credit for the hard work of the working man.
We don't need the credit. We like the stories anyway.
Well, here on Promoter 101, we know who got the credit. Joel Pryor, man. Legend and making shows happen, private jet or not, every time.
At the end of the day, just don't let them see the rats running around.
Well, the thought of the rats running around is going to keep me up at night. Thank you so much, Joel.
All right, guys. Y'all have a great one.
That was great. Joel is so amazing. Thanks so much for him to come on and sharing that story with us.
This is Sam Hunt from Paradigm. You're on Promoter 101.
For our next interview, we're joined by Moo Creative Scott Scovill, giving us a peek backstage for all things production.
You guys are on the run of the industry, dude. 8 years in a row at Polestar. You guys are leading the industry in your space.
I'd like to point out we were nominated 7 years before we won that first one. And so everyone was teasing me and calling me Susan Lucci because I'd been nominated so many times and hadn't won. I was just really used to clapping for whoever was going to win it. And I had just numbed myself to it because I found award shows really nerve-wracking. It's really scary when you're sitting there. Just completely freaked out the first few years. And by year 7, I couldn't care less. And they announced our name and I did the usual polite applause and was like, oh, good for them. And Rob Beckham was sitting next to me and he smacked me hard. And he goes, dude, it's you. Get up there.
He's just in shock.
It was a pretty great feeling. I know it's been 8 years, but you don't get numb to winning them. You get numb to being passed over. I think it's a great testament to the hard work of all the people we have. And it speaks a lot to our client list. We have a lot of great clients.
You guys are involved with some of the biggest productions on the road and have to be there from the inception of the production to building it to drawing it out. And the creative is just so involved with the act because it's their brand and you're building something to their spec and then keeping it running and alive every day. Can you talk about that process?
Moo TV actually formed as a creative content company. I was running the Nashville office of Performance AV and working directly under Lee Griffin. He moved me to Nashville. And I thought my life was over because I've been doing all these big rock acts. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And who is Alan Jackson? And what's happened to my life? And I ended up absolutely loving living in Nashville. But I got a little bored. You know, I was a rock guy that was touring 320 days a year. And all of a sudden I'm doing Weekend Warrior stuff. So I came to Lee and said, you know, people don't know what to do with video screens yet. They've only been around for a few years. And everybody keeps hiring their brother-in-law that went to film school or their music video director to do their content. content. And if you're either of those things, you're conditioned to tell a story inside a rectangle. So if you couple that mindset with something as literal and as storytelling as country music, we ended up with song after song of just, you hear the word truck and you see a truck on the screen. You hear the word dance and feet go across the screen. And to me, that was a bit monotonous and it was expensive. So I went to my boss and said, I have an idea. I think if I spend some money and invest and start a little creative company, we could provide a much better service. So I want your permission to moonlight. And my idea is that when we produce content for shows, we would do things like just put scenery up on the screens or just do colors or maybe turn the screen off, which I was already doing. Every act I worked with, I'd pick 2 or 3 songs and just turn them off, which was amazing. At that point, the people were like, "What are you doing? Is it broken?" I'm like, "No, I'm just giving everyone a break." My boss liked the idea, but he said, "I'll let you moonlight, but it's not really going to be moonlighting because I insist on being your business partner. I think you're creating an industry." And so we formed Moog TV at first to be a creative content company. So our roots are so deep into the creative and we have such a passion for that. It's really where we formed, and it's the first thing we did kind of on our own.
You're talking about stadiums. You're talking about arenas all over the world. I mean, you have to build these things to travel, and you have to vision them in a way that's so grand on size, fits in the artist's vision, and yet the hands have to be able to get it up and down in the truck and on budget.
I think that's one of the great things. So Moog TV grew, and for several years we provided creative and hardware. And we found that there's a little bit different mindset that goes into managing creative versus managing hardware. So I decided to split the two companies apart. So we now have a company called Moog Creative that handles the creative, and we have Moog TV that handles the hardware, the cameras, the screens. But the nice thing is we swap employees all the time. They're friends. We're really very tied in. So when we create these things, we're thinking about how is it going to implement in the real world. We're in constant communication with Moog TV, if it's Moog Creative, getting the right pixel map, making sure things work the first time and not wasting anyone's time on that side of it. And then when it comes to trying to design something to move, so often some big designer will come from a non-touring background and draw the most amazing thing that the artist loves. And what it would take to make that thing move and how much truck space it'll take up can be just a nightmare. And we have the benefit of being creative, but also really grounding ourselves in reality. And so we try and build and create things that move and strike very easily. And that saves the artist time and money and fuel and saves everybody some wear and tear.
It is an incredible undertaking. The fans show up and it's there. It turns on when the music turns on and it goes away. I don't think anybody that goes to a show truly appreciates that you guys are basically producing an entire movie for each tour with the artist producing and directing. And then when the tour is over, it goes away pretty much for every tour you're involved with. And there are tons of them. The scope and level that you guys are working on is so vast.
In the olden days, you would make all your money by selling albums. Now with a new, if you will, landscape of the industry and streaming, the way that artists are making money and competing is in the touring market. Selling tickets is still profitable. And so people ask, how are you doing? I hear the music industry has been going through some tough times. And I'm like, well, I feel a little guilty, but I own production companies, so we're doing great. We become the area where everyone's trying to outdo everybody. So the shows keep getting bigger because everyone's competing to make the show the most amazing show the fan has seen, so the fans will come back. We love putting it all together. I love the huge, complicated tours. It's really interesting to watch the dance and sit there in the arena at loadout in particular, because it all happens so fast, and watch the lighting company, the sound company, the video company, the riggers tear everything down and get it all out the door. And you'll have, might be 15 semis worth of stuff, and it'll be out the door in an hour and a half. And to strike 15 tractor trailers full of stuff and pack it safely into semis in under 2 hours is pretty amazing.
Well, the industry has certainly streamlined the system from stadiums to arenas to sheds to theaters all the way down. Those things come up and come down and they roll and they go right into the cases and it's in and out. And the industry's just gotten better at that. Last 30 years have really been technology at its finest with the advance in the industry.
Yeah, if you can strike it quickly, then you save money and labor. You save wear and tear in your crew, but you also save in time. You can draw a bigger circle of where your next show can be. So you make the promoters' lives easier. And you
so you can get out in an hour and a half opposed to 2.5 hours. It's an extra hour of driving you can do every
night. You can go a little further away. And man, I really wish we could do Chicago and then some other city, but we can't get to the other city in time. But if you build it to move quickly, you can. And so that can mean a lot of dollars for the tour. So it works on a lot of levels. And also, if you pack it smart and efficient, you can save truck space, and that saves the artist real money. You save hotel rooms on a driver, and you save fuel, and you save the rental on the truck. You know, that's probably, I'm not a trucking person, but I'd guess a good $250,000 a year for every truck you lop off, maybe $500,000.
You guys aren't stuck to one genre. It's not you're in Nashville and it's all country. You guys are all over the place. There's not a format you guys aren't in.
Yeah, that's true. You know, music is music, and that all looks more or less the same. I mean, it might sound different, but it all looks the same, and the technology behind it's the same. But we've had a lot of fun doing sports. I'm a huge hockey fan, just massive Nashville Predators fan. And during the playoff run, we did all kinds of screens. For those of you who don't follow hockey, we almost won the Stanley Cup last year. And the support that the city gave, you know, we put a screen outside, and then the fire marshals were like, whoa, too many people. So we put 2 more screens outside. And we just kept working with the city to try and accommodate the demand so that we didn't have unruly mobs of people because they couldn't see and couldn't get in the game. And at the same time, we wanted to create an incredible experience. And the city did an awesome job of planning it. And we were really thankful to help. And so we had screens. We had 7 screens up for the last game. And one of them, like a 6,000 seat capacity. And they were all full. It was just awesome. I saw some drone shots in Nashville that were amazing. But the other sort of thing we did during the playoffs, and we very often will do for the Predators, is projection mapping on the ice. And I love that, where you make the ice into a video screen. So you do a whole pre-show thing that's very 3-dimensional, that looks like it has depth. We love that. We've been doing a lot more projection mapping for corporate type events. We did something in Cincinnati about 1.5 years ago that had 17 different surfaces inside a theater projected on. So we had main and backup projectors in 17 locations inside a theater. And we just made the theater come to life. It was just incredible, cool stuff.
Anybody that follows you on Facebook or on any of your social media feeds knows that you're a huge Predators fan. Full on garb, that you have suits that are custom made. You are a fan on the next level.
Yeah. There's an event tonight. I'm going to put this microphone down and put on my goofy Predators suit that my dear friend Patty at Seam made for me and go to their charity event and raise some money. But I love it. I play hockey. I learned to ice skate at 35 years old when I got talked into sponsoring the Nashville Ice Holes. I went to one game and they took me out for drinks afterwards, and I said, you guys are terrible and it looks awesome and I wish I could be as terrible as you. And they're like, so start playing with us. And I'm like, I don't even know how to ice skate. And 2 or 3 drinks later, we had agreed that they were going to teach me to ice skate. And 28 days later, I played my first game. The captain looks at me and goes, you're terrible, right? I go, do not put me on the ice. I learned to ice skate this month. And he goes, well, you're huge. And I'm a little under 300 pounds. I'm a big guy, built like a linebacker, which is not usually ideal for hockey, but they camp me in front of the net. He goes, just get in front of the net, and if the puck comes anywhere near you, smash it in. And I scored our 3rd and 4th goal, and we won 4-3. And I was so hooked. I had my team crying. The first time I scored, I jumped up and down like a schoolgirl, and everyone couldn't believe I scored. And then they're like, okay, one of the guys in the bench is like, hey, you don't really jump up and down like a ninny, you know? And I'm like, oh, all right, yeah, I got it. And I played back in my head. That's right, you hug the other guys. Second goal I scored, I grabbed the closest guy to me, gave him a big hug, went to the bench, and 3 of the guys on the bench were crying. And one of them finally pulled himself together enough to inform me that I had hugged a man from the other team. And I had just scored on this poor guy, and he was about half my size. And you had a hold of him, and he was like a rag doll. His arms were just flopping around. And they're like, as much as we wish we could see your face, his chin resting on your shoulder with this confused look on his face was just awesome.
Let's jump back to the video for a second.
Oh, we're talking about video? Okay. Because I like talking about hockey.
We'll get back to the fun stuff in a second. For an act that's moving into they're touring, they've got the bus and they've got their trailer. Mm-hmm. And they're just getting there. They're selling out ballrooms and it's happening. They've got the lights and they got the sound and they got their crew and they're ready to move into something next level. What's the first step that they can do without going full on Bon Jovi?
Oh, there's a lot of things you can do. And bands worry about things looking too small, but the mind is a comparative instrument. So if you're in a small venue, if you can do anything, if you can cram anything into a small venue, it looks pretty big. And then even when they're opening acts, you might not have a ton of production on stage, but you get to use the artist's video screens and his lighting rig probably. So you really can look pretty big without carrying too much stuff. The thing that we've had a lot of success with is a bunch of years ago, we built these rolling carts for Dierks Bentley because he had to get off stage quickly. They just worked awesome for him. And they're basically video screens that crank up into place using the kind of crank that you'd crank your boat onto a boat trailer. So you roll them into place and you crank them and they lift up above the band. What's great about that is it can just go away very quickly. In Dierks' case, we would turn them off and unplug them and decable them during his last song. There'd be a guy sneaking around upstage getting it ready to go.
So what kind of bare bones budget can a band think about when they want to get into that space for the first time when they're just dabbling?
Instead of giving a number, I say, come meet us. Hang out in our shop and see what we got and let us show you some things. While we're showing you stuff, we're also going to be figuring out if we really like you. And if we really like you, who knows what we might get done. The music business can be pretty consuming. We work really hard to work with people we want to be with. So if we really like you, we're pretty motivated to make you a client.
So assholes need not apply, huh?
Yeah, I hate to say that, but the dollars are nowhere near as important as quality of life. We have a couple of competitors that work very hard to be the biggest. They are way better at that than we are, which is completely okay by us because we have never been motivated to be that. We just want to be the best. We just want to have a little bit of growth every year so that we're healthy, and we want to just stay motivated and happy.
Speaking of your clients, can you name drop a little bit? You said Dierks. Who else is some of the cool guys you get to work with?
Garth Brooks has been an incredible client recently. Brad Paisley has just been a tremendous friend for so many years. It's exciting to me to do Hall & Oates. Like last year we had Hall & Oates and Tears for Fears because I grew up trying to kiss girls to Hall & Oates, trying to figure out how to get girls to like me. And there's just a lot of history with that. When we got an opportunity at them, I was like, oh, we got to do that. And their first show is in Madison Square Garden and I'm from New York. So a lot of different clients and we love them all for different reasons.
The technology involved with what you guys do is pretty complex. It's not like you can create something and just send it out. There usually has to be a tech there that's on top of building it, taking it down and running it, right? It's pretty advanced.
Yeah, there are exceptions. There might be a band that has a really good lighting guy and they're trying to make it work budget-wise. And, man, if we could just teach our lighting guy to do your stuff, could we do that? And so we have
like maybe the entry level of getting in the first step as they're building?
We have, but I hate to do it for a few reasons. I want people to love us. And if I send a guy out and a gear out, then we're a solution for them. If I just send gear out, then I'm a problem for at least one of them, if not a couple of them. We become another duty for them. We don't like doing it for those reasons, but we do it on occasion. Our bigger systems will have, 6, 7 guys out on them. Guys and girls, we employ a lot of great ladies.
I know it's more than just hockey and the Moo Creative team, which has got to take up almost all your time. But what else are you working on?
I think most of the industry's heard of Center Staging in Los Angeles. We bought that out of bankruptcy about 9 years ago, and that's been a lot of fun to work with. Amazing people out there. Love the team. We just expanded LA. We bought another 20,000 square foot building. So LA is healthy and getting bigger. And we just opened Center Staging New York just in time for the Grammys and ran the Grammys through it. So no pressure. Your new office is 8 months old. We're just going to do the Grammys through it.
Pretty big stage.
Yeah, and we're about to open Center Staging Nashville, which is exciting too. Center Staging Nashville and Moo TV and Moo Creative are all living inside the Steel Mill, which is a big rehearsal facility I bought about 1.5 years ago. Full production rehearsals. You can load your whole arena show into it, fly your lights, sound. It's a 200-foot long room, 105 feet wide, load-bearing ceiling, 50-foot ceilings.
Sounds like a great place to throw a party.
We've only thrown one party there so far, but we're thinking about adding that as one of the things we do.
Dude, you turned into a mogul on me.
You just see opportunities, and I have a lot of great help. And in Center Staging, I have a business partner, Mitch Clark, who's just been an awesome business partner. I just have tons of good help, and I get a little bored, so I start something else up. So it's really a credit to the team that we have the energy to start and do these new things. It's a lot of fun.
People want to reach out to you so they can get in business with Moo Creative. How do they do that?
Oh, boy. Well, Scott@mootv.com. There, I just opened the floodgate.
Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing with us.
Yeah, sure, man.
Scott is possibly the biggest hockey fan in all of Tennessee. Whoa. John Huey's not going to beat me up for saying that, is he?
He might.
He's one of the biggest hockey fans in all of Tennessee and a snappy dresser. It's good to call him a friend, and I'm excited we finally got him on the podcast.
Ted Heinig with AC Entertainment here. I love Dan Steinberg. Who doesn't? Check out Promoter 101, my favorite podcast.
Birthdays, Dan. We got some birthdays celebrating this week, May 18th to 24th.
Friday, the 18th, Shelley Bowers, William Morrison Devers, Braden Roundtree.
On Saturday, wishing a happy birthday to the Franks brothers, Charlie Goldstone, Paradigm's Clint Wiley, and Greg Siegel.
Sunday, Leslie Mancuso.
On Monday, wishing a happy birthday to Chuck LaValle, Medina Salati, and Stephen Himmelfarb.
Tuesday, May 22nd, Alaska's Jason Hodges, Home Three's Austin Matthews, Canada's Justin Sudds, and Annie Fuchs.
On Wednesday, wishing a happy birthday to Eventbrite's Jason Huey and Joel Newman.
Thursday, the 24th, Weed Entrepreneur, Benji Gold, Home Free's Adam Chance, and Seth Weiner.
Happy birthday to everybody from the Promoter 101 entourage. We're an entourage now, Dan.
We are an entourage. I'm rewatching that right now, halfway through season 2. Love that show.
Season 3, part A, probably the best. So,
this is Charles Attell, C3 Presents, and I'm on Promoter 101.
Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate y'all listening to episode 83 of Promoter 101. If you like this episode, if you have some thoughts or questions, feel free to write us. Hit us with an email at steiny@promoter101.net.
If you've noticed that we put the podcast up a day early and you're going to email us and say, why did you guys do that? Is it now going to come up Wednesday nights? It's not. It's a one-time thing because me and Luke are both traveling this week, and we were just, why the hell not? Just easier to do it now. So save the emails, guys. All right? The quote of the week comes from Mark Knopfler. The music just tends to be a vehicle for poetry. Pretty profound, huh, Luke?
Indeed it is. We'll be back next week, same pod time, different pod day. We will be back on a Thursday release schedule with a brand new Promoter 101 interview with Live Nation's Joey Scolari and X-Ray Touring's Josh Javor.
All right, I got to tell you, before we get there, just to give you a taste, Joey is going to give us a view of the Charlie Sheen tour from up close and personal, being the guy on the ground, on the bus with Charlie, and literally on stage with him.
Cool.
We want to thank everybody for listening to the podcast this week, and we want to wish you some sold-out shows for the weeks to come.
Cheers, motherfuckers.
Hey, it's Mary Hilliard-Harrington.
Henry Glasscock, a.k.a. Crystal Pistol.
Scott Scovill.
Darren Lashinsky.
David Kells. Ross Schilling.
You're listening to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Ba-da-ba-ba.